Hello, hello, hello. Today is Thursday. It is April 2nd. Okay, if you're like me, you have this question. What happened to January, February, and March? I looked up and we're already in April, and it just seems like the time has flown. Well, welcome to Let's Talk Power Live. It's another week, another opportunity to talk about power in and a way to help you manage it and disrupt the ways that it can be harming your environment. I'm Dr. Tangerine Marshall. I am the CEO, founder of Liaison Educational Partners, where we sit at the intersection of instruction, of culture, and of curriculum. And I'm excited to join you here. All right. Well, we talk about power in real ways. So hopefully that came out okay. And I want to just give you something to think about. I am thankful. I always do a thankful Thursday to start our show out with because to be thankful opens you space for more in your life. What am I thankful for? Well, I'm thankful that my grandson's coming to visit me for a whole week. He's going to be here. He is everyone thinks their grandkids are exceptional. Mom, no different. Our grandson asked his parents if he could come visit us and fly by himself. He is 6 years old and he is excited to take on that adventure. So I'm thankful for an adventurous grandson. I'm also thankful that it actually is spring, even though outside where I am, it doesn't feel like spring. But anyway, let's go ahead and get down to our work today. Welcome. Let's Talk Power Live. We learned something very interesting. We learned that many of you who are tuning in are not subscribers. If you are tuning in and have not hit that subscribe and like and share button, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button. We know that it really affects algorithms. We are growing this show. We are a new show. We're actually going to turn two this year. We're a new show, and we want to invite you to join us on this power journey. So hit the like, subscribe button. We're talking to leaders, educators about power and education. People ask me all the time, what is power in education? And I tell them the same thing that I'm going to share with you right now. And here is what power in education is all about. Education is the instrument of democratic designs, and it is no less the instrument of power, the control of information, the shaping of understanding, and the influence of judgment are critical elements common to democratic design, power theory, and educational philosophy. That is what power in education is all about from a capital P perspective, the way in which those who have authority use it to shape the access, the resources, and tools that young people get. But based upon my own personal research as an educator, as a leader, I actually have my own definition of instructional power. And I want to share that with you right now. And here's what that is. Instructional power can be understood as an educator's use of their state, district, and building ascribed job related authority to afford or constrain a student's access to learning. What does that mean? That means if I am an educator, and for me, is an educator at any level, I engage in practices, I have procedures, and I have policies that either open the door or shut that door for a student to receive the excellent education they deserve. That is what instructional power is all about. And that's why I share that definition so that we're clear on what it means. So, what are we talking about today? This is assessment season, it is underway. And assessment season reveals something very important about our learning environments. It is one of the most revelatory times in our school year. It's going to reveal something about beliefs. It's going to reveal something about our expectations. And it also is going to reveal something about the way in which power moves in our learning environment. And so that's what we're talking about tonight. And here's something I want you to really lean into and understand. This idea of power in education is even more, I would say, more important, or even has a heavier weight, shall I say, when we talk about middle grade instruction. Middle school instruction is really a space where people just misunderstand the environment as a whole. And because of that, there's so much damage, I want to say. I'm going to go ahead and name it. There's a lot of damage that happens in middle school, not because the kids are broken, but because there's a lot of misunderstanding. And so, as we lean in and have this discussion about what assessment season is going to tell you, because it is going to tell you something, and as a matter of fact, it already is telling you something. The question is, are you going to listen to it? But here's something that we already know when we talk about assessment season. We already know this. We know that belonging drops nearly 20% between fifth grade and sixth grade. We know that only about 45% of eighth graders feel connected. We know engagement declines significantly. And we know that students vary in their ability and their development up to 5 years. That is a lot of development shifts. And if it is at the academic level, then that means that the educator is really challenged by how to address those variances. That's one of the things that your assessment season is going to reveal to you. It's going to show you something about how your system has been built. We focus a lot on this time of year on the outcomes and prepping kids to take their test. And that has its place, and it's very important. We want young people to be prepared for their assessments. But one of the things I've been spending the last few days on is our Drive Data Differently learning experience, where we talked about how to look at what data you actually collect and if you're responsible with it. And then we looked at whether or not and how responsive you are and what it means to be responsive to your data. And then we looked at how the instructional alignment between the data that you collect and the experiences of the delivery that kids experience, right? What does it mean to align instruction to data? And that doesn't mean just teaching to the test. What that means is or are students being instructed according to not only how they're going to be assessed, but on what they will be assessed, right? So this time of year, as we talk about test prepping, we want to talk about it in a much deeper way. And the other way we talked about our driving data differently this week, and that was actually today, earlier today, we did that. We talked about the data value. Do people understand the value of the data they are collecting and the decisions they're making about it? So when we think about how to approach this season, we want to make sure, yeah, go ahead and prep them, but pay attention to the systems and the environment, because here is the thing. Regarding your assessment environment, those outcomes are going to be directly related to the system you have created. And Josh Parker, thank you for joining me. And yes, I will check my email. I'm excited, though, to really help us lean into what we're actually going to learn when it comes to this idea of assessment delivery and assessment preparation. And one of the areas I want to go in and really dig us through is talking about the power of the assessment itself. Number one, the assessment is about design. Now, here's the thing, and here's the reality. You know it as well as I know it. If you are in schools and have been in schools for any length of time, you know that you very rarely impact the assessment design unless you are doing a teacher developed assessment. If you're doing a teacher developed assessment, then yes, you have full curricular autonomy on how to design it. But if you're not, if you are administering a district level assessment or a state level assessment or even a third party assessment, an iReady, a MAP, or DIBBLES, or some other kind of assessment, you have no control over that design. And here's the thing, we have to understand that that design is meant to evoke or get to a certain outcome. So, design is one element, and the power in that design is to the developer. The young people who take any assessment, that power does not belong to them from the design perspective. Now, the other area about assessment power is protect. What do I mean? I mean to protect the learning environment. Here's what I know is happening because I've been there, just like you are there or you have been there. The thing is this, we need to protect a learning stance, a learning perspective this time of year. I remember being in the classroom, and what we did this time of year is we stopped teaching. We completely shut down what the instruction was all about, and we went straight to test prepping. It was almost like being a Kaplan, right? We did a whole Kaplan series that has its place. And I know you're like, well, if you say testing is this or it says that, I believe that assessments matter. They do matter. And how we assess matters. But we have to protect an environment where learning is still what students understand school to be about. If we just begin to, or not even begin because you already do it, if the message is students are outcomes, then we're not protecting them as learners. And then we create an environment whereby they are just seen as arbiters of outcomes. We put them on that conveyor belt. So we want to look at the design of an assessment for sure. And then we really want to lean into the protecting of the environment itself. Because what you're going to learn when you get your outcomes, yeah, you're going to get outcome data. But what you're going to also get is a readout on your assessment environment and your learning environment as a whole. And if this is resonating with you and you're like, oh, wow, you know what? This is what's going on in my environment. I'm going to ask you to join me and then subscribe, because this is what we talk about here about power. So go ahead, like, subscribe, share. I get back. But the next thing I want to talk about is prioritize. Prioritization. What are we prioritizing? We're prioritizing learning. We have to prioritize learning. Assessments are a learning tool, not just outcomes. We have been seeing NAEP scores, and we've been looking at the scores a lot with dismay because we are seeing that young people's reading ability is stagnating, and in a lot of places, it is regressing. And that's been pre-COVID. So I know a lot is going on about COVID learning, but our assessment outcomes nationally have really been on a decline for a number of years. But we have to prioritize the learning. What are students learning? If in fact what they are being taught and what and how they are being assessed are not fully aligned, then we are not prioritizing learning. And I know that educators on every level get very hung up on whether we're teaching to a test. The goal is not to teach to a test. The goal is to ensure your students are prepared for the assessments that they will get. Do they have opportunities to experience the assessment environment? That's learning. Do they have opportunities to grapple with the kinds of questions that they're going to get? That's also learning. Do they have a clear expectation of if they're doing open ended or open response assessment questions? Do they have a clear understanding of how to put forth their best understanding and their best way of demonstrating their knowledge, skill, and ability? That's learning. That's prioritizing learning, because if we don't do that, let me tell you what's going to happen. The students whose families can afford it, they're going to be ready. And the vast majority of students whose parents may not be able to afford it will not be ready. And so, as a learning environment, we want to prioritize that, right? We want to be careful that we understand the design. As an educator in a classroom, do you understand your assessment design? The ones that you do not develop? Are we protecting a learning posture? And are we prioritizing that? Are we prioritizing an environment whereby the learning is critical? That's the question, right? And so as we go forward, I want us to think about a leadership learning perspective as well. So here we go. When there's pressure, and this time of year is pressurized, as a leader, when pressure increases, here's what traditionally happens. First thing, control increases. Why? Control feels comfortable. Next, data is reviewed, absolutely reviewed. It doesn't mean that the data itself is giving us any more information. It just might mean that we have a lot of it. Next, students are measured. They're always measured. But here's the thing. If they're being measured and we don't have any additional information, what are we measuring? Do they understand why they're being measured? Do they know what they're being measured on? The other thing that happens is instruction narrows. We shut it down. We highlight what we call power standards. I've been there. I know it has its place. But if you have not been anchoring in these standards all school year, doing it right now isn't going to do that much for you. The next thing that happens, adults interpret first, and sometimes they make assumptions first. But if we're looking at this from a design perspective, that's the key. Assessment season as a design perspective. Here's what could happen. You design, it becomes more intentional. You design this time of year with more intentionality, as opposed to just the control. The experience is investigated. How are young people experiencing this time of year? What does it look like and feel like as you, the leader, walking through hallways, going into classrooms? Are you stopping young people in the hallway, asking them about their experience with assessments? And then students are meaning makers. This is a critical element. How many times are students made, or not even made? How often are they allowed to be meaning makers of their own assessments? I'm partnering with a school in Massachusetts right now, and I talked to one of the principals, and we worked through a structure of mistake analysis. And we do this structure whereby students predict their outcomes, and then they get their outcomes and they do a comparative analysis. And she said it worked really well with their writing, because for the first time, young people were brought into the process of analyzing their outcomes. We say we want these things. We have to put that first. And then thinking is expanded. That's important. As opposed to narrowing down instruction, let's expand the thinking. Do your young people in your environment know the different types of questions that require different thinking? Do they know the difference between a recall and a reproduction question versus a strategic thinking question? Do they understand a basic comprehension question versus a extended thinking question? And do they know how to approach that? And then, as opposed to just adults interpreting first, students engage first. We keep saying we want these structures for our young people, but are we creating the environment whereby they get it? Somebody challenged me today. They said, well, does this even matter when for the last 20 years, kids can't read or write? And I said, well, yeah, it does matter. Because sometimes when we use our instructional power, we're using it to the detriment of the very thing we say we want. And those are some of the ideas I cover in my book, how our use of the power leans into our leadership learning and how we can create the right kind of environment to ensure that we get the outcomes that we want. That's really important. And as we continue this conversation, I want to be clear about something. This time of year, it isn't about the test. We think it is. It isn't about the test. This assessment season is going to reveal a couple of things. It's going to reveal what we prioritize. It's going to reveal what we are willing to interrupt. It's going to reveal who we trust to think. And it's going to reveal who we reduce to just outcomes. And we know that we reduce our kids to outcomes and levels. Every one of these leadership decisions makes a difference. Every one of them makes a complete difference. And so as you are beginning to consider what your assessment season is revealing for you, and if you want to work through some of this, I want to invite you to something. We are re-engaging our leadership. It's not really a leadership. It's called our Facebook Instructional Power Learning Community. It's on Facebook. It is Liaison Educational Partners Instructional Power. What is it? It's our community. It's a whole name, right? So I'm remembering it because we haven't had it for a while. It's just been hanging out there and we've decided to bring it back. And because we want to go and be partners with you in this work because we know it's not easy. And so if this is something that you're thinking about, go ahead and you want to keep working with us and partnering, not working with us per se. Of course we want that, but really digging into your understanding. We're going to be doing a lot of this work over in our learning community on Facebook. And so before that, I want to, as I've done every week, I'm going to give you 3 power moves, but I'm going to do something differently tonight. This time, I'm going to actually walk us through a deep dive on one of them so we can take a look. So let's get started on that one and see how it works out. So our first power move is we want to make data a shared experience. This is what it looks like. Students engage with their own data before adults finalize interpretations. Teams create space for students' reflection alongside the analysis, and leaders normalize multiple perspectives on what data shows. Let's take a look at each one of these 3 practice elements so that you can begin to do this tomorrow or Monday. So the first thing is make it a shared experience. Students engage with their own data before adults finalize interpretations. Here's what you can ask. After a assessment is given and the result, you can do this in any stage, right? You can say, after the assessment's given, what did you think you do well? What did you understand well? And then the next question you can ask them is, where are you still unclear, unsure, uncertain? Ask them that. Give them the space to let you know what is on their mind about the assessment, right? And when it comes to the educator side of this, educator teams create space for student reflection alongside analysis. I want you to ask this question. What surprised you? Were you surprised? Maybe they were, maybe they weren't, right? Ask them, how did you approach this assessment? Because sometimes we don't ask them that. And then ask them this question, what strategies can you shift? Because maybe they need to shift some understanding between the different types of questions they're going to get. That's really important to think about. And then on the leader side, I want you to think about this, leaders normalizing multiple perspectives. I want you to consider this. Conduct a cross-population roundtable on either a benchmark, a recent department set of assessments, and especially on your upcoming state level assessments. Make sure your students are in there, because that way you're going to create this environment where the data is going to be stronger because students are going to be involved. The impact of those three with the students and the teacher teams and the leadership teams, the impact of this is that stronger student data ownership that we all say we want, and agency development. That's really important. We keep saying we want these things. Here's how to get it done. If this is resonating with you and you're saying, you know what, this is what I'm experiencing in my environment, go ahead, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. This is what we talk about here. This is the kind of instructional power that gets to what we say we want for students. And then let's go on into the next power move. We want you to shift from just results to design thinking. The design, not of the test, because you can't control it, but you can control the environment around it. What does that mean? You're going to ask this question anyway. What results did we get? Yes, you're going to ask it. Keep asking it, but add this question. What did we design to produce those results? Here's your question, right? You're going to shift from only asking one to this one as well. What does that mean? The impact of that is this. You're going to get a balanced analysis of the outcomes and the conditions that produce them. You want that balance, and that's important. And then move number 3. I want you to pause. Please pause before responding to data. What does that mean? Number 1 thing, name assumptions. You're going to have them. Get them on the table. I had a leader that used to say things to me, not just to me, but to our whole environment. She would say, I want our cards on the table face up. Get your assumptions out in the open so that you can begin as a leader to deeply understand them, so you have the structures to disrupt them. And then the one thing I want you to also do is add an additional perspective. Go grab a student. Do not get the Statue of Liberty girl, because she's going to give you what you want to hear. She's going to make you feel good. I want you to go get a student who is quiet, who is often overlooked, who might be a multilingual learner. Find that student who might be your diamond in the rough and add their perspective here. And I want you to conduct an assessment review. That would include an entire group of people, from your educators in the building, your secretarial staff, your administrative staff, your students. Include a roundtable, because if you want to design an environment that really does do something differently, you're going to need to do something differently. So that's what we have. I want you to consider all of those 3, but we leaned into number 1. And if number 1 is something you want to experience and try out, join me in our Facebook group so that we can really begin to talk it through. And let's go ahead, and I want you to remember something. And this is critical. Assessment season will tell you something. And in fact, it already is. It's going to tell you something about your culture. It will tell you something about your expectations. And it will tell you something about your systems and your leadership. All of those. The question is not, what did students learn? The question is, what did this season reveal about how we led and how we lead? Because that's as important as the outcome that kids generate or get from you. So I want to thank you for another episode of Let's Talk Power Live. Please remember to hit the like button. Please remember to subscribe to the channel. If understanding your power in an instructional way that is actionable and not just pie in the sky, would love to have you as part of our journey. And we will see you next week for another episode of Let's Talk Power Live. Thank you, everybody.